Hello, my name is Dwayne Spearman. Welcome to Directional Bible Ministries. This is a teaching ministry that is called to make all men see what is the fellowship of the mystery, which from the beginning of the world hath been hidden God, who created all things by Jesus Christ. Today we're going to pick up our study in the book of Daniel. This will be session number 5. We're going to pick up in verse number 16 and just see how far we can get today. So a little bit of context here. We know that in Daniel, Daniel chapter number 1, verse number 1, in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, king of Nebuchadnezzar, came into Babylon, king of Babylon, came into Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, with part of the vessels of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar, to the house of his God. And he brought the vessels unto the treasure house of his God. And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of the eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princes, children in whom is no blemish, but well favored, skillful in all wisdom and cunning and knowledge, and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. And the king appointed unto them a daily provision of the king's meat, and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king. Now among those were the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names. For he gave unto Daniel the name Belteshazzar, and unto Hananiah of Shadrach, and to Mishael, Meshach, and unto Azariah, Abednego. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Now God had brought Daniel into favor and tender love with the prince of the eunuchs. And the prince of the eunuchs said unto Daniel, I fear the Lord, my lord the king, who hath appointed your meat and your drink. For why should he see your faces worse liking than the children which are of your sort? Then shall ye make me endanger my head to the king. Then Daniel said unto Melzar, whom the prince of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, prove your servants, I beseech thee, 10 days, and let them give us pulse to eat and water to drink. Then let our countenances be looked upon before thee, and the countenance of the children that eat of the portion of the king's meat, and as thou seest, deal with thy servants. So he consented to them in this matter, and proved them 10 days. And at the end of 10 days their countenance appeared fairer and fatter in flesh than all the children which did eat the portion of the king's meat. Thus Melzar took away the portion of their meat and the wine that they should drink, and gave them pulse. So here we see God's faithfulness to Daniel and his 3 friends. And you know, I've been walking with the Lord for a long time, and I am convinced that when we do it his way, things just seem to work out. Now, I'm not one of those that believe if you do everything right, your life's going to be perfect. I know way too much history to say something like that. But I do believe that God blesses you in his own way, whether it's in this life or in the next, when you are obedient to him. But it's not an easy lesson to learn. It's just much easier sometimes to make an easy wrong than it is to make a hard right. I mean, we live in a world where there's just a tremendous amount of peer pressure. And sometimes it's hard to stand up against the majority and, disagree. This old world that we live in, the world, the flesh, and the devil, they fight tooth and nail against us doing things God's way. It's just not fashionable to do things God's way. And I believe the days are just getting harder and harder and harder as America turns its back on God. It's becoming increasingly difficult, I believe, to do what's right. I believe that's why man continually tries to remove God from every aspect of his life. The old saying, out of sight, out of mind. They must believe that if they are not constantly reminded of him, he'll go away and leave them alone. Sadly, we know that they are very much mistaken, just like Adam and Eve in the garden, whose consciences told them that they had sinned, and that is why they tried to hide themselves, their conscience. However, hiding themselves did not change the facts, and they were held accountable. That word conscience there, all of us are born with a conscience. And that word, if you break it down, con, which is with, science, which is knowledge, with knowledge. All of us are born with knowledge that there is a God. Only the fool has said in his heart that there is no God. So we all have a conscience, and we're going to be held responsible for what we know. Man can run all he wants, but he'll never outrun his conscience, because his conscience screams to him that there is a God. I have heard those who do not want anything to do with God say, well, I just don't believe in God. Well, my friend, nobody is forcing you to believe in God, but your unbelief does not change anything. To be frank, I think you're lying to yourself. Because why? You have a conscience. You know there's a God. You know there's something bigger than you. Look in your Bibles, Romans chapter number 1. I had to switch away from eSword, which I used for years, because it just, for some reason, would not work with Windows 11. So look in Romans chapter number 1 and verse number 18. And I do like the Olive Tree Bible a little better because it allows you to do what's called verse picking, which means you don't have to go all the way back to the book and the chapter and the verse. You can just go back to the chapter and pick another verse and move forward. So that's called a verse picker. There's very few Bible applications out there that have that feature, but I really like it. So we're talking about how that you're lying to yourself. Why? Because you have a conscience. Look what he says. And Paul said, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness, anything that is ungodly, anything that is unrighteous of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness. They hold the truth. In other words, they know the truth. Okay? Because that which may be known of God is manifested in them, for God hath showed it unto them. In other words, they know the truth. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made. You and I were made by God, and God, his the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen and being understood by you and me, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without an excuse. They know there's a God. So any man that runs around and says, I don't believe in God, he's lying to himself. Because that, I don't think I was going to get down in that, verse 21. Because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Professing themselves to be wise, they have become fools. So any man that tells you he doesn't believe in God, he's lying. He's lying to himself, and he's lying to you. Look down in chapter number 2. Here's what I'm talking about, that verse picker. You can actually go to chapter number 2 and then go down to verse number 14. That's called a verse picker. Reminds me that I was saying you can pick your friends, you can pick your nose, but you can't pick your friend's nose. But anyway, you can pick your verse in the Olive Tree Bible. Romans chapter 2, verse 14. For when the Gentiles, in this world, there's only two types of peeps, okay? There's Gentiles and there's Jews. That's it, okay? You're either a Gentile or you're a Jew. For when the Gentiles, which have not the law, so Gentiles didn't have the law wasn't given to the Gentiles, the law was given to the nation of Israel, do by nature the things that are contained in the law. In other words, their consciences bearing them witness that lying is bad, stealing is bad, running around with your neighbor's wife is bad. Their consciences, they do by nature the things that are already in the law because they have a conscience. These having not the law are a law unto themselves, which show the work of the law written in their hearts, their conscience also bearing witness, and their thoughts the meanwhile accusing or excusing one another. So man knows there's a God. Man tells you he doesn't believe in God. He's lying. He's lying to you, and he's lying to himself. Look in Psalm 19. There's a lot more I could say about that, having not the law. We're not under the law. The Gentiles were never under the law. The nation of Israel is under the law. And again, that's right division, and I'm not talking about that right now. Look in Psalm 19. In the book of Psalms, verse number 19, verses 1 through 4. Psalm 19, 1 through 4. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. I mean, we look around, we look at creation, we see what God hath wrought. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Their line is gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them hath he set a tabernacle for the sun. The world, nature itself, declares that there's God. Period. God is real. We'll all stand before him one day for our betterment or for our detriment. But all of us will one day stand before the Lord. Now, let's go back into Daniel chapter 1 and back to verse number 17. As for these 4 children, God gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. So far too many have tried to say that this is proof text. You need to be a vegetarian. Well, I mean, yes, when God created Adam and Eve and placed them in the garden, they were vegetarians. But then after the fall, they were no longer vegetarians. Okay. In context, God blessed Daniel and his friends not because of what they ate, but because of what they did not eat. The issue was obedience, not diet. So don't start running down the vegetarian trail there. I mean, we do know that Adam and Eve, like I said, were vegetarians in the Garden of Eden before the fall. And it was not until after the flood that man was given permission to eat meat. So Adam and Eve did not eat meat. And, one day we're going to go back to that. But that was God's plan. He told Noah, he said, I want you to take 2 of every unclean animal and 7 of every clean animal. We hear the song about 2 by 2. Well, it wasn't I mean, it might have been 2 by 2, but 7 is not an even number. So one of them went in there by himself. Okay. So he had to take 7 of every clean animal. This was so that he could eat and sacrifice some of the clean ones upon leaving the ark and still be able to let 2 go for the purpose of procreation. And we see all this over in Genesis chapter number 7. Look over there in Genesis chapter number 7 and in verse number 1. Notice what it says. And the Lord said unto Noah, Come thou and all thy house into the ark, for thee I have seen righteous before me in this generation. Of every clean beast thou shalt take thee by 7s, and the male and his female, and the beasts that are not clean by 2, the male and his female. So it wasn't all 2 by 2, okay? He had to take 7 of all the clean ones, 2 of all the unclean ones. Then notice in Genesis chapter number 8, in Genesis chapter number 8, and look with me in verse number 20. Genesis 8, verse number 20, and Noah builded an ark, and I builded an altar. So the ark has already landed on the mountains of Ararat. So Noah builded an ark unto the Lord, and took of every clean beast and of every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelled a sweet savor. And the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake, and for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more everything living as I have done. And while the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. And God blessed Noah and his sons. And he said unto them, Be fruitful, multiply, and replenish the earth. And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and every fowl of the air, upon all that moveth upon the earth, upon all the fishes of the sea, and into your hand they are delivered. So obviously this means that prior to the destruction, the animals were not afraid of man. But now they are afraid of man with good reason, because in verse 3, every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you, even as the green herb have I given you all things. So, yes, man was a vegetarian prior to the flood, but after the flood, he became a meat eater. He became a carnivore. And I am convinced that I don't know what happened, because a lot of times we'll try to point out the way they lived in the Garden of Eden and try to apply it today. But understand, in the Garden of Eden, sin had not entered into the world at that time. Man was in his perfect state, and everything about that state was perfect and in harmony with God. But after the fall, okay, something changed. Something happened. And now God says, after he's destroyed the earth with water, I want you to eat meat. And meat is good for you. And I've learned, the older I get, I respect my little vegetarian friends, but there's some downsides to being a vegetarian. I think we need to, in our modern health, whatever that is, that John F. Kennedy, is his name John Kennedy? The Kennedy that's in there now, that's overseeing the Department of Health or the Food and Drug Administration, he's inverted the pyramid. We need to be eating meat. We need to be protein eaters. We need to be eating eggs. We need to be eating those things. And I've learned as I've grown older, we need those for our body. God knew what he was doing. Now, finally, we are told that in the millennium, everyone will be vegetarian again. But understand, God will be back in control, and whatever went wrong in the fall is going to be corrected then, because the Bible says in Isaiah chapter 11, verse number 6. Look over here in Isaiah chapter number 11, verse number 6 through 9. This is speaking of the millennial reign of Christ, 1,000 years on earth. The wolf will also dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid. That's a goat. And the calf and the young lion and the fatling together, and the little child shall lead them. And the cow and the bear shall feed, and their young ones shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like an ox. The sucking child shall play on the hole of an asp, that's a serpent, and a weaned child shall put his hand in the cockatrice's den. There shall no hurt destroy, they shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. So, I mean, we know one day that's where it's going back, but for now, God has said we can eat everything that moves. It's for our good. In the meantime, God told Noah and Peter, eat it, be grateful. Look in Acts chapter 10, and I'll close with this today. Acts chapter number 10 and verse number 9. Notice what it says, verses 9 through 16. On the morrow, as they went on their journey, have I got that right? 9 through 16. Okay, they drew nigh into the city. Peter went up to the housetop to pray about the 6th hour, and he became very hungry and would have eaten, but while they made ready, he fell into a trance, and he saw heaven open and certain vessel descending upon him, as it had been a great sheet knit at the four corners, let down to the earth, wherein all manner of four-footed beasts of the earth, wild beasts and creeping things, fowls of the air, and a voice said unto him, Rise, Peter, kill and eat. And Peter, being a good kosher Jewish boy, said, Not so, Lord, for I've never eaten anything that is common or unclean. This is one of those this is one of those two unclean ones, okay? And the voice spake unto him the second time, What God hath cleansed, that call not thou common. This was done 3 times, and the vessel was received up into heaven. You see, we're not under the law anymore. You and I, during this dispensation of grace, are not under the law anymore. I mean, you go back into the law of the Old Testament. I mean, yes, they were told that they couldn't eat certain types of animals. But understand, us during the age of the church or the dispensation of grace, we're not under that law anymore. Now, I do think God talking to Peter here, God wasn't just talking about animals. Okay. I mean, he was talking about how Peter was to take the gospel of the kingdom to the world. And, the gospel, I mean, that was God's original plan. God was going to come. He was going to present himself as the Messiah to the nation of Israel. They were to kill him. Romans 9, 15, 16, 17 says that unless the testator dies, he's not able to. What is it? I'll show it to you. I'm rambling again, but Hebrews 9, I think it's about right here. For a testament is not a force after men are dead, otherwise it is of no strength at all while the testator liveth. Whereupon neither the first testament was dedicated without blood, for when Moses had spoken every precept to all the people according to the law, he took the blood of the calves and the goats. So what he's saying there is that the testament could not come in. Let's back up, just get a little context here. Verse 15. And for this cause he is the mediator of the New Testament, that by means of death for the redemption, why did he have to die? So that the transgressions that were under the first testament, okay, could be put away or covered, that they which are called might receive the promise of eternal inheritance. For where a testament is, there's a necessity, there be the death of the testator. So the New Testament could not come in until Christ had died, so that he could forgive them for the transgressions that they committed under the former. So, Christ had to die. So after Christ died, at that point, everything, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, first 7-8 chapters of the book of Acts are to the Jewish nation. It's offering them the kingdom. And they were commanded the Great Commission, which is not for you and I today. The Great Commission was that they take the gospel to Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and then to the uttermost parts of the world. So he was showing Peter that ultimately God wanted, it to go to all the world. And of course, we know that didn't happen. The disciples didn't leave Jerusalem after the scattering. They stayed. And of course, eventually Pentecost came, and of course, we know what happened. Eventually, the Pentecost happened first, then the scattering happened, and of course, they rejected the preaching of Peter, they rejected the preaching of Stephen, and then God raised up the Apostle Paul to do what the nation of Israel was unwilling to do. And Paul, believe it or not, preached a different gospel. He preached the gospel of grace, while the 12 preached the gospel of the kingdom. The gospel of the kingdom, repent and be baptized for the remission of your sins. The gospel of grace, believe. That's it. Okay, so God had a plan A. He wanted to use the Jewish nation to reach the uttermost parts of the world, but they refused. So God set them aside, Romans 11, and then Romans 8, 9, and Romans 9, 10, 11, and he raised up the Apostle Paul to reach the Gentile nations, to do what they were unwilling to do. But God was showing Peter here just a glimpse of what he wanted to do. I mean, he wasn't showing Peter, I don't believe he was showing Peter the gospel of grace or anything, but his desire was that eventually the gospel of the kingdom would go to the Gentiles. And of course, we know Peter understood that, because in his writings and in his behavior, we do see that. But anyway, that's a different study for a different day, and that's not what I'm getting into. So look at, we're not going to look at, but next time we get together, we're going to pick up in verse number 18 and talk about what the king decided to do regarding a dream that he had. And remember, Daniel was the one that was gifted in dreams and interpretation. So, all right. God bless you guys. You have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.